you everyone for coming.
I think so.
To today's session. Yes, it's working. So thank you, everyone. I'm really happy and excited to introduce Kristen Donlevie, who is an undergrad in occupational therapy.
A doctoral student.
Doctoral student.
I'm sorry,
it's
credit
a bit
where
different
credit's due.
in Canada. She's a doctoral student in OT, in occupational therapy at Boston University. And it was really my pleasure that she invited a few of us from Montreal to be part of her capstone project. And her topic is on developing tools for adults with arthrogryposis to better help them navigate the healthcare system as adults. So this session is meant to be interactive. So get ready, please, to exchange and share, because your feedback will be so helpful for her project that she is submitting. No pressure, no stress, in a few weeks, but she's almost ready. She's done terrific work, 18 interviews in less than 3 weeks. It's really fantastic. She's very dedicated and motivated. And after Kristen, we have Rose Elekanachi, who is also a doctoral student, but in physical therapy and rehab science at McGill. She's a physiotherapist by training from Nigeria, and her project is on the caregivers experience. So what do caregivers, their perspective, their voice when caring for children with arthrogryposis. So I'm delighted to introduce them both, and we can't wait to hear your work, Kristen. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction. I have to unfortunately stand behind the podium for the PowerPoint, so sorry, I'm going to be hiding back here. But yes, so as Noémi said, I am a occupational therapy doctoral student. I also have distal arthrogryposis in my lower extremities. So, a life of medical appointments and surgeries that many of you in this room are incredibly familiar with really inspired me to find my way into occupational therapy. And since then, I've had the patient experience my whole life, and now on the other side of things, kind of the experience of being on the clinical side of things. It's been so poignant to me, the just true lack of awareness and understanding that medical practitioners have on arthrogryposis. And so right now I'm, like Noémi said, in the dissertation phase of my program. I'm ending in a few weeks. And my school graciously allows us to choose our projects. And so I really wanted to try to dedicate this research to making even just the smallest dent in helping medical practitioners to understand this condition more and help enhance our communication between us and them. So going around the room right now, I think we're passed out the infographics that we're going to be, like Noémi said, chatting on today. So if you can just be looking at those sort of as I'm presenting about the capstone experience, most of our session today is going to be talking about them. So if you want to start gathering your thoughts, that would be perfect. So in order to figure out what our capstones are on, we have to identify a problem first. So for me, the problem was kind of trifold, right? So just a true lack of knowledge of what arthrogryposis is. Healthcare practitioners across the literature and in interviews and things like that report just a lack of knowing what the condition is and how to treat it. So that leads us to problem number 2, where the responsibility of being the expert in this condition really falls into the hands of the people with the condition, their care partners, and their family members. And so problem number 3 is exactly that, right? So we have a lot of knowledge on our bodies and our needs and our condition, and the experts and specialists in this field who are here with us this week speaking to us, they also have an incredible depth of knowledge on this condition, but that knowledge is not being effectively transferred into the hands of general medical practitioners. And as it stands, there's no succinct resource that sort of just outlines exactly what AMC is and how medical practitioners can help us to engage in our daily activities. So that's the solution here, right? That's what I am working on. I'm creating an infographic resource that will help to enhance this communication between medical practitioners and AMCers. And I'm doing so with all of your help. So, I really am only just one person with this condition, and all of your experiences matter, and I really need all of your help. So thank you everyone for being here. The objectives of this project are to reduce that knowledge gap that I was discussing on arthrogryposis, to 2, increase self-efficacy for people with AMC navigating their health management, and to contribute to this sort of overarching developing toolkit that a lot of people are working on to help increase independence of people with AMC engaging in their daily activities and managing their health. So the process that has taken for me has been sort of in 3 phases. Phase 1 is what Noémi was talking about. I led in the span of about 2.5 weeks, a lot of focus groups and interviews with 18 different people. A lot of you are here today. So again, thank you so much for those of you who participated in that phase. The little graphics on the screen are just sort of characteristics of what the makeup of those people looked like. So 50% of them had a myoplegia. I believe 44% had unspecific or underdiagnosed condition, and 11% had distal arthrogryposis. And this map just shows us where people were located. Phase 2 is where we are right now. So I have created drafts of the infographics. Everything on the infographic that you're seeing has come out of the information people gave me in the interviews and the focus groups on strategies that work for them, questions they like to ask, things they want their medical practitioners to know. And so today I am receiving feedback from you. And then for future steps, I will be incorporating your feedback into making the final draft of these infographics. I will present and defend that to my university in just a few weeks. And then when I have the final product, I will be able to put that on the AMCSI website. And I'm also hoping to get that published in an academic journal so that it can get into all of your hands, right? Because the point of this whole thing is that it's made accessible to you all. So with that, we're going to get into sort of the more interactive phase of this session. So we're going to start by looking at the AMCR form. So it's like the pink and gray. And what I really want to hear about, thank you, is I just want to hear your opinions. I want to hear your thoughts. You know, what on here is really working for you? What are you seeing that you're kind of like, I don't necessarily agree with this? Or is there anything that I missed? Anything that didn't come up in the focus groups or interviews that I led that you really think would be important to include on the sheet? So we have, you know, for the rest of the session, we'll spend a few minutes discussing this form, and then we'll switch to the medical provider form, and we'll spend a few minutes discussing that. Additionally, I will be collecting these back from you before you leave the room. They're just a draft, so I can't let you take them today, but I promise when they're done, I'll be giving them to you. But if anyone has any thoughts that they want to jot down or write right on there, please feel free. I'll be, you know, collecting them and taking all of that into consideration as I finalize the drafts. So with that, if anyone has any thoughts, I would love to hear them. Yeah, Steve.
Glenn, this is cool. I think it's great. The one thing that I noticed is that it's only in the last couple of years that I've identified some areas where the arthrophosis affects me. And I wish I had known sooner. I'll just repeat that.
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
I've only just now noticed that, is there a button?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It's not? You can hear me? Okay. My whole life I'm mostly affected by lower limbs. My whole life I never worried about anything. But this is just a real small example. I discovered just a few years ago that the reason I can't do a J stroke when I'm canoeing is that my wrists have limitations. And then I think back to all the things that I've had trouble doing that are related to my wrists. So doctors tend to focus on the most visible, obvious thing, and so will you, because walking has a bigger priority than doing a J stroke. But it's important to learn in terms of understanding your own body and your own needs, and maybe there were things that could have been done, therapies I could have worked on at a younger age that never got touched because they were working on the big stuff.
Right. Yeah, no, that's an important.
I don't know how to add that to this.
Yeah. Well, I think, something that got brought up a lot in the focus groups we did was exactly that. It's like sometimes medical practitioners, you walk in and we have a visible physical disability. So what you see first is what is focused on, but that's not necessarily what the problem is in the moment or what it is that you're seeking help for. So I think that's a really good point to bring up. Anyone else have any thoughts about that or anything else you're seeing on here? Yeah, Abby?
So going off what Steve said, it's quite bring some of the words that I have trouble describing, but it's like everything that I experience with our caregivers,
Right.
everything, my experience is from the community. So sometimes there are things that are legitimate medical issues that I didn't know were medical issues because I just assumed it was A, something literally everyone did and we talked about, or B, just an religious thing, and I just that, and so I don't really know how to ask a doctor like what is normal or what is abnormal. Like I won't even think to bring it up if I don't.
Yeah.
So I don't really know what I do want to provide.
Yeah, there, I think we have, I have a, can I have do we have a copy? Thanks. Of the medical provider one. There was a lot of people who brought up the fact of like either over relating non-AMC related symptoms to like, oh, well, I don't really understand this thing. And you already have a condition that I don't really understand. Must be that. Or people over relating non-related AMC symptoms to AMC. So, oh, I have incredibly horrible intestinal symptoms. That must be AMC. But for me, like only my legs are affected for AMC. So it's not that, and so I think just having an awareness, people brought up of like, what actually does it affect in your body day to day? And then thinking about if this is a problem that sort of falls under that scope, that umbrella, then maybe it is something with my AMC. If it's something completely unrelated, then no, and I should probably try to go get this checked out so that I get an accurate diagnosis for that and accurately solve that health issue. Yeah. Did you have something you wanted to share?
I just wanted to say thank you for this as a mom of an AMC, or as she's continuing to get older and sort of participate more in her medical appointments. This brings me a great level of comfort knowing that things like this are coming out for when she turns 18 and has all of a sudden be that person answering all of the questions. Thank you for your work.
Yes, thank you for saying that. It makes me honestly so emotional when people say things like that because, sorry. I think, exactly, like we have to be that person, right? And something that was brought up a lot in the groups is so many of us are so incredibly lucky to have parents who did that for us and just, paved this incredible path for us where they advocated and they didn't have the answers, but they figured it out. And then it turns to, it's now our turn to sort of do that. And we haven't done it all along because we've had these superhero parents who have done it for us. So thank you for saying that. I really, really appreciate it. Yeah.
The one thing, oddball thing that I ran into with my regular,
Like your general practitioner?
primary
Yeah.
care provider.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the name of those folks. I'm old enough that I think I learned early on that I had what was called classic AMC, which I think is now translates to aneuplosia.
Yeah.
And but my doctor had me listed in my medical records as distal, and I just happened to see that over his shoulder one day, and I said, "Hey, wait a minute, that's not actually the one I have."
Right.
And because I have hand difficulties and feet difficulties, I think that's just made that assumption, and so it was just an oddball thing.
Yeah.
Make clear what it is you have.
Right. And I think, as I could bring up the slide again, but I think it was 44% of the people who participated in these groups with me either didn't have a specific diagnosis or they weren't sure what their diagnosis was. And I think something about it too is, that came up in the groups is like, it's not always, unfortunately, the practitioners that you're seeing might not always be right. And so if you see something that you're like, that doesn't apply to me, actually, it's okay to speak up about that. You know your body the best out of anyone on this earth. And even though they're a medical practitioner, it doesn't mean you can't say, I'm affected differently than what you think. And let me show you or tell you about that. Yeah.
To ask my first medical appointment if I can send information in advance. So can I send you all of this in advance so that I don't waste 15 minutes of my appointment going through this.
Right. When
Like
you have 20
90%
minutes.
of the time, they don't read it, but it makes me feel good to say, I actually sent that to you before.
As per
so
my email.
as per my email that I sent, and I asked you to confirm receipt, and you did. We're like wasting my time. So that's something that I started to do with and to also give doctors an opportunity to say, I'm using this,
Mhm.
or I'm actually not the person. I'm knowledgeable in this.
Absolutely. I think that's a really, really great idea to add to this, sort of like as the strategy or the know before you go. Like even something like this, like the one for the medical practitioner, is something you could send along beforehand. So that was something that came up a lot too in discussing this with people, is kind of just the buy-in of the practitioner, right? Because sometimes you try to explain something and people would say, well, I feel like I come off as a know-it-all, and they have this ego because they went to school and, you know, they dedicated a lot of their lives to learning about medicine, and for me to come in and tell them they don't know something could feel a little rude. So I think even just for the buy-in of like, I respect your time and the time we have together. If you want to look at this beforehand, like, you know, some people maybe have questions about my condition, and maybe this will ease some of those questions when I'm in the office or whatever. I really like that idea.
One more point, sorry.
Don't be sorry. I want to hear it all.
Something that I'm learning more actually being here and just kind of doing my own self journey, sort of how much of my physical self was the priority as I grew up, and how much there's like an emotional piece
Yes.
that often gets put aside because we may be perceived as doing okay. And so maybe like including something about like your emotional well-being in the day in your life. Things like, how are you coping emotionally? Are there areas in your life that you're feeling that you may want additional support in? I also do this in my job, so it's just sort of.
Absolutely. I just want to second that. I'm going to counseling for things that happened 60 years ago that I don't even know about. So
That's okay.
say it again. I'm going to counseling for things that happened 60 years ago that affected my whole life. Things that were good coping skills for little kids spending 3 months in the hospital are not necessarily the best coping skills for somebody trying to have a professional job. So, you know, or have a good marriage or
Yeah.
other things. So, they're more about look at the whole impact on the person, their emotion.
I think it's so important because it's like, you know, especially with a physical disability, sometimes medical practitioners can just be like, okay, well, what physically is going on with your body? But we're whole people. And of course, what's going on physically with their bodies is going to impact our emotional well-being. And I think that's a great idea to put it in like the day of your life. Like, what are you presenting today might be different than if you go see someone a year from now. But including the emotional well-being, I think is a really, really smart idea. Thank you for that.
Often medical practitioners won't ask about psychosocial well-being or how the person is doing emotionally. I think it's really important for the person then to bring that up because it can get easily overlooked and not addressed at all. The same for pain. I don't know maybe how you feel about that, but I've been in situations where for other conditions, but where doctors don't ask about pain, and then it kind of never gets addressed. So I think that maybe, you know, you're the expert in your own life, and it's your time when you're with a medical practitioner to say how you're feeling to make sure that gets some attention.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hate to continue the dialogue and go back and forth. I'm sorry about this, but the biggest issue for me is the things that I don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
I had a gallbladder problem, and they were going to send me home thinking that it was a whole thing, and my wife was with me. She looked at the doctor and she said, "No, you don't understand that when you ask him, you know, the pain on a scale of 1 to 10, and he tells you it's a 2 or 3,
That's
on his scale.
Yeah.
And indeed, I needed to have my gallbladder out instead. That I just am so used to it, I don't even know it's happening.
right.
And the same is true on the mental and emotional things, that I didn't know I was compensating. So
Mhm.
I don't know how to put it on the person with AMC side, but we are the experts on ourselves, but in some ways we're ignorant.
Yeah, and I think, we can go back and forth between the medical practitioner and AMCR one. I think we are a little bit anyway. So if anyone wants to be looking at that one as well, please feel free. But I think having maybe in the questions that the medical practitioner should be asking, I'm hearing maybe like they should ask about pain, they should ask about emotional well-being, because it's not your job to tell them what to do and tell them how to help you. It's really not. And so if they're asking all these questions and getting an accurate picture of you as a whole person, then it's their job to think about, well, is there something else going on with this person that maybe they need a little extra support or medical help with? Also on the medical practitioner one, I think bringing up pain is such an important thing because like Steve's saying, people with chronic pain just have a different scale, and the scale of like 1 to 5. I know every single time I've had surgery, I'm like, I don't know how to answer that because I think my day-to-day I'm probably at a 3, but that's someone else's 3, so that's my 0. Like every day there's pain, but I don't even notice it anymore. And so in working with other people, I found that there's actually one pain scale that really goes into how it's affecting your day-to-day activities. It's called the Oswestry pain scale. And that has been validated for upper extremity AMC and AMC that affects the trunk. Unfortunately, not, I don't think, for the lower extremity at this point, but it gives a more holistic picture than just a number on a sliding scale, I think we have just a few more minutes. I'm not honestly sure how much time we have, and I want to make sure we leave time for the other speaker. So if anyone has any other thoughts about, either one of the sheets. Yeah.
I was very interested in looking at the Western Disability Questionnaire. On the form, it says that for pain, it impacts trunk and lower extremities.
Oh, did I read lower? Okay,
Yeah.
I'll make sure to check that. Thank you very much for that.
Well, editing. That is fascinating. That's very fascinating that literature, because that is definitely an issue as a practitioner.
For sure, yeah. Does anyone else have any final thoughts? Anything you're thinking like this? There's something else that I really think should be on here that's not.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Will this be like fillable eventually, like to be put out? Or
That's a good idea, to make something that you can kind of have a blank space to fill things out. Maybe I'll think about making one that kind of is this and then this without the information, and you can fill it out. Would that be helpful? Okay. I will try to incorporate that.
Kristen, could you put your email up maybe? So if
Yes.
anyone has any comments later on or questions, they can share that with you. Yeah. Donlevie@bu.edu.
I do have a few business cards, all fancy like, if anyone wants one as well to take with you. But thank you so much, everyone, for your input in this. Like I said, I'm one person with this condition, and I think being at conference is such an incredible experience because you see how it impacts all of us so differently, but really there are so many things across the board that we can relate on, and I'm so thankful for all your help in this.
Can I use that? Is it on? Wait, hold on. Am I supposed to point at something?
No, so the dongle is here. You shouldn't have to point at the dongle.
Rose, do you want this one or the?
No, I don't know which works.
So we may have to have you.
No problem. Yeah. All right. Just give me a second to hang this. I seem to always struggle with microphones up here.
I have things.
Okay. It's making a sound. That's fine.
BU, not BD. BU.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Rose Elekanachi, and a huge thank you for Kristen for taking us through that exercise of reviewing the sides of the AMC and the side of the healthcare professional as it relates to communicating wants and needs and the requirements to be able to get proper care in the healthcare system. Because what's the point of accessing the healthcare if you don't get the healthcare needs that actually relates to what you're presenting as a doctor with? So today I'm going to be talking to us about the caregiver's perspective on the impact of AMC. And like I said, my name is Rosa Lekanachi, and as Dr. Naomi introduced me earlier, I'm a fifth year PhD student at the School of Physical and Occupational Therapy at McGill. I'm submitting my thesis in 5 weeks, and this is a part of my exciting and scary at the same time, but I'm excited about it. And this is a part of my PhD thesis. It's been an experience trying to know more, to understand more, and to work with parents on understanding how we as healthcare professionals can do our best to make sure that the care is really patient-centered and we don't ignore the most important people in this conversation, which are the parents, the family members who are surrounding children, adults with AMC. So first of all, I would just like to say that this paper has not been published in the Orphanet Journal of Rare Diseases, and I was going to put a QR code to access it, but I'm sure if you just type the title, you would see it there. And if you want us to talk about how to get access to reading the whole document, please see me afterwards and I'll share it with you. To go ahead in this conversation, I want to do a quick background. And my background would be all about caregiving, because we know that the experience of caregiving comes with a lot. And exactly to talk about that, caregiving as it's, as we know it, encompasses a range of activities to support the individuals, if there's any form of limitation to ensure that daily living is properly achieved. And this also can be caregivers of family members, could be paid caregivers, could be family and friends who are helping around the home, could be informal and be formal. And all of this is trying to contribute to the patient's well-being from various perspectives. And when I say various perspectives, I'm talking about the physical, psychological, spiritual, emotional support, even if it's daily activity helping with, those are the different activities that this encompasses. I'm sure I'm not going to give any definition to what AMC is, but I'm just going to show that, like we all know, AMC has different presentation, different affectations, different things, that comes around. And sometimes you don't even realize what the limitation or what things are going to show up onto like a later stage in life. And all of this results in varying types of caregiving requirements. And like we already know, the fact that it impacts different, daily living and participation or situation, and all the variety of it causes for the experience of caregiving to also be different. We also know that we say this a lot. There's a heterogeneity when it comes to AMC, which then brings the experiences, even the lived experiences of persons with AMC, even the caregivers, to vary a lot, even though we say it's, like even in the definition, we call it a group of congenital musculoskeletal conditions. And that's why the experiences are very different. Now, with all of this understanding and knowledge, what we wanted to do with this paper is try to understand how, the experiences of caregivers with AMC, explore it and try to see if we can identify factors that either facilitate and hinder it, and then see how we can help parents, families with children, adults with AMC to actually be able to achieve access to healthcare, access to rehab services, access to different services that they require and need, and see if there are any hindering effects that we can actually alleviate to ensure that living with AMC it's not an experience that someone has to worry about a lot. And we did it using a mixed method study. It's a two-part study, and I don't know if anybody here has or saw at any point where we shared the quantitative survey online through some of our groups, some of the AMC support groups on Facebook or so. We kind of did a quantitative study and did a qualitative study, but today I'll be talking about the qualitative study. And this qualitative study involved about 13 interviews. We did interviews, about 60 minutes or so structured interviews. Some of them ran more above 60 minutes to an extent. But what we did was try to use about 10 structured questions which we created to try to understand the experience of parents with children and adults with, well, we did this mostly for children and young adults within the ages of 0 to 21 to try to understand the experience of the caregivers in caring for these individuals. And we used STEM questions, and some of those questions that actually pointed a lot of, gave us a few very interesting answers are the ones that I highlighted, because these kind of shared, like I said, it's a full study of quantitative and qualitative. The quantitative aspect, we were trying to understand the cost of caring. And like we all know, the results we're still working on right now, but the cost piece, it shows that the more from 0 to 5, that's where most of the cost is, because we're trying to understand the surgeries, the different things that happen, trying to understand the condition, trying to understand what exactly it is, because there's some countries, this was a global study, so we had several countries that were involved, but for us here, we're going to be reporting data on America, United States, Canada, Spain, and France. But there were so many things that came up in the cost I wanted to understand in the qualitative, which is what we use these questions for. And most of it was trying to understand what helps, what is making it difficult, what makes it easier, what supports have you gotten, and what's impeding the supports. Are there any supports that you actually knew about that we can share with other parents? Those are what these questions were used to try to understand. And from all of these, we were able to we had about, in the form of in the result aspect of things, we had about 158 participants who tried to be a part of the study. But when it came to the qualitative, which was the interview space, we only had about 33 who showed interest. And of the 33, only 13 caregivers were able to schedule an interview and actually do an interview with us. We understand how very not so easy it is with all the appointments, all the other things that you have to do. So we really appreciated the 13 caregivers who gave us their time in our 60 minutes interview sessions. And of these 13 participants, we had about 10 biological parents and 3 biological fathers who were involved. And of this 13 participants, the mean age was 45.41. And we were lucky to find out that about 9 of the parents were employed, 2 were unemployed, 1 was retired, and 1 was on a workers' compensation. And like I said earlier, these are the countries who finally, were part of our study. We did a very global call, but this was what we were able to come up with. And like I said earlier, we're very appreciative of those who gave up their time to be a part of these interviews. All right, as it related to the children of and the young adults of the parents who were part of the study, these were the statistics we got. About 7 of them were females, and the rest were males, and with a mean age of 10.14. 7 of the children whose parents were part of this study were diagnosed in utero, and the rest were diagnosed after birth. And we had majority of the kids with upper limb and lower limb involvement of AMC, and the rest were either lower limb or just one person with an upper limb involvement. Of all our children that were involved in this interviews, like I said, of the parents, just about 12 of them, there was no neurological involvement, because we wanted to understand, as the caregiving experience related to the other additional affectations, the other presentations that the child comes with, or is it just of the lower limb or upper limb? But for us, 1 was unknown, but the rest had no other neurological involvement or any other involvement that the parents could identify and let us know about. Now, as we wrapped up as I need to wrap up my presentation, I want to present to you the themes of what parents actually shared with us. So for us, what we did was we got the interviews, we analyzed them, and tried to understand, okay, in form of themes, what exactly are parents trying to share with us are their experiences, and we categorized them in 5. And I'm going to be talking about one of them one after the other with quotes from some of the parents. When we started this conversation, we wanted to understand the impact of caregiving, of course. So this was the first thing that we talked about. And parents were very interestingly excited about having to share their experiences with us, because from all conversations, like we all know, sometimes it can be a lonely process caring for a child with AMC or a young adult with AMC, because in the area maybe there's no other person you can have this conversation with. So they were very, very, very happy to be able to share with someone else and with other parents, to be able to share whenever they were able to. There also were conversations about where parents were excited that they had the freedom at work to either go for appointments, they were able to take time out to care for their child, because some of them were, I remember a parent shared with us that during COVID, and they were working from home, it was just a great, blessing to just be able to be at home and be there and not have to take a permission for work every time. I know a few parents also mentioned how the child is the daily office, and it's where caring for the child is where they get joy from. So I think that was an experience that it seemed very interesting to find out that the impact of caregiving, of course, sometimes there are a lot of daunting processes to it, but parents found joy in having to be able to care, having to be able to share their experiences as well, and not feel alone in the process. And lastly, as much as they try to care, parents also share how sometimes with the caring, they need additional support, which I'll be talking about secondly. As the child grows older, of course, the caring would be a little more difficult than it normally would be. And they were able to share that so that parents don't feel like they're alone in the process or feel ashamed of the fact that, oh, should I be complaining that this is happening? It was okay to actually share the experience of, yes, for sure, as the child grows older, there is a more intense need of having to care and needing extra help from other people around them. And on the second piece that has to do with the cost of caring, we know that when it comes to access to medical care and you have to change environment or go to different places, the cost increases sometimes depending on what exactly you are doing and what exactly you need to do for your child. And in this, we talked about the bulk of the cost. I think this was what we heard a lot, that the bulk of the cost came when the child was much younger, and as the child grew older and care becomes more stable and you know what you're doing, now you have access to more resources as time goes on, depending on the state or country you are in, they were able to understand and navigate the services better. Also, parents mentioned how, and which I will point out here, they decided, like, what do we cut? What do we, do to ensure that we're not spending too much on other things and neglecting some activities? But one important thing that I think I found very interesting was a parent mentioned how they used to travel out of town somewhere else for care, and they made it into a vacation. They take the other kids with them. After the appointment, they make sure that they go and see things around and see the area, which I found very interesting, because I think the mom mentioned to us that we don't have time to actually go on vacation specifically. So when we go for those appointments, we take 1 or 2 extra days to make it a very important one for us, which was very, very interesting to hear, and I wanted to share as well. And lastly, it was quite interesting to also find out that although some parents have access to good incomes and all that, it also meant that what they have access to when it comes to services were a little lower, because the healthcare system believes that since you have a lot of money or you earn a lot of money, you don't need some of this additional support that the government will normally give or the healthcare system will normally give, which was a problem that was mentioned. But I remember the parent mentioned that they felt very fortunate to be able to do, still give their child the care and services that they require and need. One of the biggest ones of indirect cost is always high, and indirect cost, when we talk about indirect cost, we're talking about the money part, not the money part, how much time you leave work, how much time you don't have for other extracurricular activities, how much time you don't have for productivity stuff again, and all your life and all every other thing, you dedicate your time to your child. And I'll quickly run through it. That's related to the support systems. And when I talk about support systems, I talk about the other, like, environmental piece of things that helps with this journey of caring for a child with AMC. For this, we knew that it was more difficult, as mentioned by the parents, during the COVID times, because some parents could not get extra help for their children who need, like, maybe night nurses and every other kind of things. It was hard to do that. For some countries, there were no associations. They did not know about the AMCSI. And I remember at every of these interviews that we did, we always mentioned it and said, oh, if you come to the AMCSI conferences, there are other parents who are there we can share with, and your children can meet other people. But then we take into cognizance that this is an international travel that they have to take in, that they have to also do. There were different things as, the wages that had to be paid to, like, maybe a paid caregiver, and the kind of work the amount of work they have to do seemed not commensurate, enough. And I know a parent mentioned this, that it seemed like it was not enough to be able to pay a caregiver to take care of the child. And that was something that was mentioned, and encouraged that if there were any other support systems or support resources, the healthcare professionals should let them know about it as early as possible so that they have access. Another very important thing that I think I admired about this was the resilience of parents in managing and navigating the child's care. I would say, at this point, that if you're a parent here of an AMCSI, you should give yourself a round of applause before we continue. And why did I say and mention this is because from all conversations that I've had in my interview and my experiences, parents went above and beyond from their conversations to make sure that their kids got access to education, leisure support systems, had access to all the recreational activities that they needed to get through, no matter what they had to do. And like Kristen mentioned earlier, that particular sheet, I'm glad she's working on that, because I know a parent who said she had all that and prepared her daughter properly for it, all that written out, so that wherever she went to, whoever she spoke to, she was able to make sure that everything she needed was given to her, especially making sure that she was taken into consideration in her care, in her activities, and all of that, which was quite important. And of course, schools sometimes, especially for the younger ones, was hard because of IEP and a lot of others. But parents did a great job of making sure that they advocated a lot for their kids. And lastly, as the children goes, we need to support their growth and development. And how do we do this? Making sure that they know that they still have access to things, making sure that they know that life goes on, life continues. We can always advocate for them. They can still surge forward, and they can also advocate for themselves. You advocate for them when they're younger, and you want to encourage and help them to advocate for themselves as they grow older. And that is what this kind of showed. Parents sought a lot of strategies to ensure that they supported this growth process from elementary school to high school to university and beyond. And when they become independent living as well. And like in conclusion, and to tie all of this together, what we were able to get was that parents working together, caregivers working together to enhance the well-being of this caregiving roles was very important. As you're here today, you're sharing with each other, you're hearing from every other person, we're hearing from the adults, the young ones are hearing from the teenagers and the young adults and the adults at AMC, and they're learning and they're beginning to understand better. And we as healthcare professionals and researchers are working with you every time to make sure that these experiences, not doing anything just on our own, getting experiences, ensuring that we're translating this back to the healthcare system, and ensuring that even policymakers, as it relates to this, we share briefs, we create infographics to make sure that AMC is now brought down up to the limelight, and everything that needs to be done for children with AMC and adults with AMC to live amazing life is properly done. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Any questions